Well, no, one's going to be.
Round, don't they?
They do.
Probably is
They do.
the size of this room.
They,
There was a parking.
my older daughter and her family were going to
This is about the size of this whole thing. And it was
We're not wearing masks tonight.
No, but we will tomorrow.
10-story skyscraper. 35 million.
I'm surprised the hand sanitizers aren't first.
Footprint. I thought about bringing it up, actually.
We sold our property next to the Jaws, which was an acre, to National.
From the public, they can come in, and we've protected.
Just so they could put up a wet lab, laboratories. Unreal.
Oh, I saw Clint Brown at the breakfast the other morning. He and I are going down to our 60th high school reunion.
Talked about that before, yeah.
Yeah, discounted room rates, $219 a night. Okay, we'll call the Selectmen's meeting, Town of Wolfeboro, for March 4th, 2020. Any reason for non-public tonight?
We have two items under RSA 91A 3 Roman numeral 2 lowercase e pending litigation and lowercase l consideration of legal advice.
Okay. Next is consideration of minutes, February 19th, 2020. Anybody want to make a motion?
I move we accept the minutes.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Public hearings, temporary event permits. American Legion Post 18 to hold Memorial Day Parade on May 25th, 2020, from 9:30 a.m. to 12 p.m., starting at DeWolf Field, down Main Street to Dockside and Cape Park. Thank you. Is that on?
Wasn't on.
There it is.
All right. You notice I didn't blow on the mic?
Yeah.
Okay, my name is Harold Chamberlain. I'm here, as you said, on behalf of the American Legion. I am the commander, the parade organizer since 1994. And there is going to be a very minor change to the parade this year. Bobby Burns from the Kingswood Music Department was concerned. We've been what we call a flag service at Carpenter School and then down the post office. Traffic was being allowed to go behind them as they were standing there, and they didn't like cars going just a few inches away. So they asked me if I could do something about that. And what I've determined I would do, for me, on rainy days, we lower the flags, we place the wreath, and we go down to Wright Museum, have our speeches and everything. Well, I do a similar thing, is we will Carpenter School in the Wolfeboro Post Office. We'll lower the flags as you're supposed to, decorate the monument, but we will just do the flag service, Pickering's Corner, march straight on down to Dockside, and into Dockside, there'll be a parade. There'll be no stopping on the road, so the veterans and the children won't have to worry about the traffic. The police department won't have to stop traffic, just slow it down a bit as it takes, 5-8 minutes to march that far. So, I think it's going to be a better parade that way and safer for everybody. Other than that, everything's all the same.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Would like to make a motion?
I move we approve the temporary event permit for the American Legion Post number 18 to hold Memorial Day Parade on May 25, 2020 from 9:30 a.m. to 12 p.m., starting at DeWolf Field down Main Street to Dockside and Cape Park.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
I have been given permission to bring up in brief the Independence Day Parade. I talked to Dave about this prior to your meeting. And I'd like to call the Chief of Police, Dean Rondu, up here so he could address this as he and I have been discussing. Thank you.
The only thing I really want to say is that I think we should do it again this year. So we'll wait for the meeting to occur, and I think we probably want to have a public hearing on it, or
In the reference to the 4th of July?
reference the 4th of July.
Okay.
Okay. So I think probably a good idea would be to do the entire parade route, but again, I think that is something that probably needs to be discussed.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dean.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, next we have event permit for New England Lyman Club to host a boat show on June 6th from 9 to 3 at the Town Docks, Cape Park Bandstand.
Hi, I'm Rick Filio. I'm the show chairman for the show. This will be our 21st annual show at the docks. Last few years, we've been doing it the second Saturday, but we had to pull it back in again due to other stuff going on within the club. So, again, this would be our 21st straight year at the docks. It's a small show. Typically only tie up like 2 to 2.5 docks. I think we put in for 3 sides of fingers, but and it also includes the 2 parking spaces right adjacent to the gazebo and the gazebo for registrations.
Okay, any questions?
Mr. Chairman, just an update on this. There is actually no need for a police department detail with this event.
Okay.
Which it states on here it is, but that can be removed effective today.
Okay. Any questions from anybody? Do you want to make a motion?
I'll move to approve the temporary event permit to the New England Lyman Group to hold a boat show on June 6, 2020 from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the town docks and Cape Park Bandstand.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Good
Thank
luck.
you.
Thank you.
Next, we have New England Chapter Antique and Classic Boat Society to host a boat and car show Saturday, September 12, 2020 from 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the Town Docks, Dockside Parking Lot, Cape Park Bandstand.
Hi, Donnie McLean. I'm with the ACBS local chapter, and we hope to have a show just like we've had for the last probably better than 20 years. There will be one slight change this time. We didn't get in early enough and we lost the date that we usually have, so we had to move it forward a week. Other than that, everything will stay as it has been in the past.
Okay. Anybody have any questions?
I just have one comment. It says here from the fire department, do not block the fireboat access. I know
Yes.
you never do, but it's on
No.
here, so.
Yeah, and it's been discussed with everybody also.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Beautiful. And you put out, if we gave you information, you would put out information about checking your boats for milfoil?
Yes, we would do that. Sure. Yeah.
I'll get some of that to you.
All right, thank you.
Okay. We want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve a temporary event permit to the New England Chapter Antique and Classic Boat Society to host a boat and car show Saturday, September 12th, 2020 from 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the Town Docks, Dockside Parking Lot, Cape Park, and Cape Park Bandstand.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, next we have a public hearing, acceptance of grants less than $10,000. State of New Hampshire Highway Safety Project 20-201, entitled Wolfeboro Bicycle Pedestrian Award in the amount of $6,366. Somebody here to talk about that?
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I'm Chief Dean Rondo, Wolfeboro PD. So we have applied, and we originally received approximately $3,000 and change from New Hampshire Highway Safety for a variety of highway safety grant patrols. What these normally do is put officers on during the busy summer season at no cost to the town of Wolfeboro. This is all federally funded. These are all federally funded patrols. What they've just done is plussed it up by an additional $6,333, or correction, $366, $6,366. Brings it right up to just under $10,000. It's probably a good idea to hold a public hearing on this, just because we don't want to be, accused of structuring the grant or something like that, which isn't the case here at all. But we were fortunate, and they decided to give us some additional money. So, subject to your questions, that's all I have.
I have a question. We got 3 before. How many more shifts will we have? And I'm assuming this is in the greater downtown area this summer from last summer. That's correct.
What it will, well, it will add actually I don't know a number of shifts I can give you off the top of my head, but it's going to be considerable. So you'll see a much greater than normal presence in the downtown area, which will assist with things from traffic control to pedestrian crosswalk safety, traffic enforcement, so forth and so on.
Okay, this is a public hearing. Is there anybody who wants to speak in favor of this? Want to speak to it at all? Okay, I'll close the public hearing. Board?
Would you like a motion?
Yes.
I move that the Wolfeboro Board of Selectmen to accept a grant award in the amount of $6,366 for the State of New Hampshire Highway Safety Project 20-201 entitled Wolfeboro Bicycle Pedestrian Award.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next is our bulk vote, which is the weekly manifest for February. Property tax abatement refunds, intent to cut wood or timber, property tax credit, and exemptions. Somebody want to make a motion to approve that?
I'll move that we accept the bulk vote.
Second?
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we have, next is board appointments. We have none. New business, set public hearing date to hear application for tax relief pursuant to RSA 79-E, Samuel Avery House.
Mr. Chairman, we received, I believe Mr. Cook is here this evening, we received from him a request. We've received the application. It's been forwarded by our assessing department. Upon receipt of the application, according to RSA, we need to hold a public hearing no later than 60 days. At this point, I'm recommending that we hold the public hearing at the April 15th Board of Selectmen's meeting. That'll keep us within the 60-day time frame from when the letter was sent and received. And if Mr. Cook has anything he'd like to add, I believe he's in the audience.
House LLC. The only thing I wanted to really is to ask a question. I have reached out to Maggie Steer about meeting with the Heritage Commission and getting their opinion. Is there anything or anyone else the board would like to be sure we meet with or speak with, or will be looking to get an opinion from? I'd be happy to arrange that prior to the public hearing, if that would be helpful.
The only thing I had down here, I had circled the Heritage Commission, and you're doing that, and that's great.
Yep, very good. Super. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter.
Peter, will the 15th of April work for you for the meeting, the public hearing?
Pardon?
The 15th of April, will that date work for you for the
Absolutely.
public hearing?
Yep, thank you.
Okay. Wolfeboro Farmers Market License Agreement.
Would you like a motion?
Oh, sure.
Go ahead, Fred. I'll make a motion to move the Wolfeboro Board of Selectmen to set a public hearing on April 15th, 2020, to hear an application for tax relief pursuant to RSA 79-E, Samuel Avery House, managed by Peter Cook.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next, we will for area farmers market license agreement.
Good evening. My name is Megan Young. I'm the president of the Wolfeboro Area Farmers Market. We are here once again this year to renew the lease for the use of Clark Park for our outdoor session of the market. I believe that the lease has already been, we'd done some work on the lease ahead of time, so at least that's already taken care of with the updated dates.
Yep.
Thankfully, we're not conflicting with the 4th of July this year, so there's no shifting on that part. We're very happy about that.
Hey, does anybody have any questions?
I do. I had asked that we get a sketch, which has been in the other leases.
It has been, and unfortunately, I had a catastrophic printer failure.
Okay. And if you want to look at it, if this is it, then we can attach it. The only,
Yikes.
okay. The only other comment that I have, and that is from having conversations with Christine, they park onto the lawn at the Clark Park, real close to the trees, and I think we are starting to see some damage on the trees, and I think that we need to put some barriers up so the cars park far enough away from those trees, or we're going to end up killing a whole bunch of nice trees there. So I don't know exactly how you may want to do that. Do you want it part of the lease, or do you want to do it as Park and Rec will put that up?
Yeah, I can confirm what Linda has said. We, this summer, had to have a tree removed, a young tree removed, due to death. And we can probably work this out between Farmers Market, probably pull in Christine from Parks and Rec, and maybe the tree warden to develop a plan as to how to protect those trees with this event.
Absolutely. The last thing we want to do is damage any of the trees.
Oh, that's a bad thing.
And it's not you, it's all the people who love to come to your market, and there's not, they want more parking, and so they get in close to
They
the
do.
tree.
And actually, the one thing that is on the new map that you do not have regarding parking is we've had a wonderful thing happen this year, and with the advent of Jolly the Trolley joining Molly the Trolley, we've actually made a deal with the Wolfeboro Trolley Company so that there's going to be a trolley stop at the farmers market so that you can use Jolly as a shuttle and give us that much more opportunity for parking that'll be off-site.
It's lovely. That's lovely. The only other thing I didn't see in the, attached to it was the insurance certificate.
I did also email that. So I emailed that to, unfortunately late, as I said, the unfortunate
I'm
printer
comfortable if we add
ailment.
the map to the lease and we get the insurance. I'm fine if I get those.
Going to make that a motion?
Can I ask a question before we ask a
Sure.
question? And not to ask you to do, lots of staff work, but it's such a beautiful place and a lot of great things happen there every Thursday. Do you have any fun facts? And if you do, share them here and we'll get them out there so that people can understand just what a great resource this is. So if you got anything fun, fun statistics about how many people visited, or new vendors that came last year, or the fact that children were in the middle of the field, they had a dulcimer player. I mean, it's just a nice thing to just let people know that it's going on, especially newcomers who are trying to discover what's happening in the town. So if you have any fun facts, share them along, and we'll see if we can get them out in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, now or
Send them along. We don't need them now.
can do. Absolutely. There's a lot of actually really fun new things that are going to be happening this year. We have a new, our board of directors had quite a bit of turnover in the fall, and so we've got a lot of really great, excited people who have come onto the board and have some really amazing ideas.
Great.
and we have a new market manager this year, and she is also extremely excited and motivated, and we're looking forward to a really fantastic year.
Great.
Nice.
Thanks for doing that. Yeah.
You want that motion? Okay, I move to approve the 2020 license agreement between the town of Wolfeboro and the Wolfeboro Farmers Market for their term May 21st, 2020 to October 15th, 2020, contingent upon a plan and insurance certificate.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next is Lakes Region Household Hazardous Product Facility and Lakes Region Planning Commission Program Updates.
I'm Sarah Silk, I'm the Lakes Region Household Hazardous Product Facilities Site Coordinator. We've been in business for 18 years. We were established in 2002. We started out with 6 household hazardous waste collections in Wolfeboro, then we added 2 in Alton. 2006, we did a pilot program for Newark Northeast Recycling Council for medications. In 2007, we added a second medication. From 2008 to 2016, we did 3 medications, and then since 2017, we've done 4. We just had our midwinter February, which we do not hold at our site because we have no heat. We have that down at the Episcopal Church. In 2019, we had 793 households for household hazardous waste, plus 74 households that came from medications, for a total of 867. That is not the most that we've ever had. In 2011, we had 1,008 households. In 2019, we collected 165 3/4 gallons of medications. That includes controlled, non-controlled prescription, over-the-counter, and personal care products. Our biggest collection for medications was not this year, but we were amazed at the fact that this year we had 18 households show up with like 50 gallons of medications from their homes, and in 2019, 31 people came with 70 gallons. So the people that came this year brought about twice as many gallons of medication. We were looking at maybe phasing out the winter one if it wasn't well attended because of the cost, and that's not going to be happening right off because we have so many people come. And we work with the Lakes Region Planning Commission. This is Paige Wilson, and she is an assistant planner up at LRPC. And they have hazardous waste collections, and we interface with them because with our program for our 2 member towns, Alton and Wolfeboro, we also can accommodate people from non-member towns for cash or check, no credit cards. This morning, I spent time with her up at Plymouth, talking about medications and shops programs, but tonight she's here. In 18 years, we have never had a logo for our program. We have had flyers. We've had a business card, I have, and that was it. And because we work with them cooperatively, she has liked to show logos from all of the people that work on the programs with her, and found we had none. So Paige, explain what you've done for us.
Right. So, yeah, so I had worked with Sarah and Liz Dion from Alton, pretty much to brainstorm some ideas about logos that we could potentially have for the facility. And I worked with our summer graphic design intern to come up with some ideas, and we brought them to Sarah and Liz and kind of discussed them. And then from there, we determined that there was a common theme with the mountains and the kind of environmental look that the facility has with their brochure and their business card. So we wanted to be consistent with that, and upon further drafts of logos, we decided to come up with this logo for the people in the back. And so we're hoping that we can use it to kick off the hazardous waste program in May, and it'll be a good distinguishing image between the product facility and our household hazardous waste collections, which we have been doing for about 33 years, I believe.
Wow.
So, yeah. And, you know, it'll be a good thing to identify the facility if people have something that they can, you know, we can use it as an advertising and a marketing thing, so, yeah.
Sometimes there is confusion between Lakes Region Planning Commission and Lakes Region Household Hazardous Product, and for years, all of my flyers were mint green to differentiate them from theirs. And then a couple of years ago, we were fortunate enough to get someone that would take this fabulous picture for us with their drone. Or maybe it was the second drone, because the first one drowned. But anyway, we've always, even through Lakes Region Planning Commission and through our program, our focus is to get all this nasty stuff and keep it away from the lakes and the drinking water, because if those lakes become contaminated, no matter which one it is, everybody goes away and they don't come, you know, our economy suffers with no tourists. And we were very fortunate at LRHHPF and also for both towns that Paige was able to do this through a USDA grant. Yeah. So today we were talking, and maybe she'd like to just say a couple of words about the SHARPS program and medication program we were talking about this morning, and how perhaps we can work cooperatively to increase our collections for SHARPS, which the police department will tell you are dangerous when they're out there. Anybody that's working on the road crew finds them on the edge of the road. They're all over the place. When you have your cleanup days around Earth Day nowadays, Girl Scout troops used to go out and do it. A lot of places won't let them anymore because there are so many sharps around.
Yeah, so I manage our USDA solid waste management grant, which this year was kind of a bonus point if you cover prescription medication disposal. But we also do stuff with composting and electronic waste and a lot of public education and outreach, which is what I think we're going to move forward with in the Sharps and Medications program. We met with a couple people from some recovery facilities in Lebanon. The Claremont Exchange was represented there today. And we also co-presented with the Northeast Resource Recovery Association, who has a similar grant, and they want to do things in this topic as well. So it was a very good meeting. It seemed like everybody had some good concrete steps for moving forward and maybe doing some more take-back programs at police stations, something more long-term, and yeah. I'm very excited.
You all must remember Dave Knox, who's passed now, and I worked with him for 5 years on a Health and Human Services Safe Shops disposal program, and we did a trifold folder then about sharps and how to dispose of them safely, and it's greatly outdated. And so that's something we were talking about this morning, and I think LRPC will be able to help us update that. There's a lot of website information on it that's no longer correct. And, you know, things change. One of the presentations this morning, they were showing getting rid of sharps in the plastic drink bottles. Well, in the last 10 years, those plastic drink bottles, okay, everybody, you grab a hold of it tight enough to get the cover off and you've just given yourself a shower because they're so thin. There is no way it's safe to put sharps inside those bottles. And the state recommends, well, they say Tide bottles, but any type of heavy laundry detergent bottle is much safer. But you know what? That's safe when they go up to my solid waste facility and give them to my guys, and then they drop them into the compactor, and then they get crunched, and that can expose the needles, and they go from our solid waste facility to someplace else. And some of the people at the meeting this morning were from Casella, and then they go down to wherever they get dropped off next with Casella, and then their people are at risk. We don't do curbside here, but, you know, curbside guys, they pick up trash in both hands, and like you pointed out today, they kick them with their knee up into the trash compactor, and that's when they get stuck. They have safe clips, little needle clips. If we could just get the word out so people use them. Back probably 7 years ago when I was on that subcommittee, it was $40,000 workers' comp if someone was pricked with a needle. HIV testing, hepatitis testing, et cetera, and we know it didn't get any cheaper in these years. So the more we can do, I mean, I can't even imagine, like I said this morning, how many needle clips could you buy for $40,000? Holy Christmas. you know? So we need to educate and get the word out there. You can't be at the bottom of the falls catching people. You have to be upriver stopping them before they jump in. You know, so we're going to see what we can do, and the worst thing is to have information out there like these flyers that have outdated information. So I'm very thankful that Paige is working on this with us, because it's not something we can do by ourselves. And I want to thank the Board of Selectmen for all their support for my program. And the Police Department. Thank you, Dean. You have any questions?
No? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda is Cyanobacteria Committee name change. Warren.
No, I think that's it. Paul, do you want to do it, or you want me to do it? You came up with the name, and I can do the committee?
Okay.
Okay?
Whatever, somebody's.
Why don't you do it, Dave? So the Cyanobacteria Committee has also a communications team, and as we did our work for the past 9 months, we've met like 14, 15 times in the past 6 months. We decided that the name cyanobacteria is a little limiting, but we didn't want to make it so broad that your eyes would water. I shouldn't have used the word water. So the team actually said, you know, this really is about Wolfeboro waters. It's about protecting waters. And that's broad, but it also gives us the ability to vision, you know, our different water bodies. We have our lakes, we have ponds, we have rivers, we have little streams, we have lots of waters. And although the original emphasis was, in large part, was from the Wentworth folks, Wentworth Watershed Association, you know, we got a wake-up call a couple of years ago that we probably should start paying attention more broadly to our other water bodies, Cary Beach being in particular. So the team, we built a little website, and it's in what we call sandbox mode now. We're ready to take it live as soon as we can get a little more IT support to do that. We named our website Wolfeboro Waters. So you'll be able to go to the town website and go to wolfeborowaters.com, and you can also go to Wolfeboro Waters by coming in from the outside world. You won't have to necessarily log in through the town website either. But then the question was, what do we do with the cyanobacteria name? And so we made a recommendation to the Cyanobacteria Committee to change the name to Wolfeboro Waters. And there was a fair amount of discussion, which resulted in a send it back to us to think about it. So we met a few weeks ago and thought about it again, and we haven't changed our mind. We've said it's Wolfeboro Waters. So did that do it?
Yeah, that did it.
That did it. All right, thank you. So we recommended that the Cyanobacteria Committee be renamed Wolfeboro Waters, and I guess we need the Board of Selectmen's assent.
Yes, and we also wanted to move it from an ad hoc committee to a standing Board of Selectmen committee, Wolfeboro Waters, changed the name. And we were looking at having 8 members, probably 3 of them we would put on for 3 years, 3 for 2, and 2 for 1. That would give us the rollover. It would be a standing committee because we really feel this is something that we don't want to lose our focus on. Where ad hoc committee, after a while, is no longer. So does any board member have any questions, or would you like a motion?
I guess a motion would be good.
Okay. I move that we change the Cyanobacteria Committee's name to Wolfeboro Waters. We change it from an ad hoc committee to a standing Board of Selectmen committee with 8 members, 3 members for 3 years, 3 for 2, and 2 for 1.
Second.
I was waiting.
I was trying to get Brad to do it.
Okay, this is to change the name of the committee to Wolfeboro Waters. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed?
All right.
Okay. Is this you going to do anything with this, Warren, tonight, or? Okay, I don't have that on here. Oh, yeah, I do, right there. Go ahead.
You're up.
Your time.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm Warren Muir, and I'm here in my capacity as the chair of the Wolfeboro Waters Assessment Subcommittee, and here to present the committee was formed last November or December, after there was a bloom in Winter Harbor, and the Board of Selectmen decided that there ought to be appropriate follow-up, and so I'm as chair of the assessment subcommittee, I'm not going to talk about the various mitigation actions that have either been undertaken or planned, because I think you're well familiar with those and the warrant articles and so forth associated with that. And we will have a website up in a matter of a few weeks that will be an important communications vehicle, so I won't speak to that. But I do want to speak to what we've found out about the conditions and trends of our lakes through the results that we've had since the task force was formed. We have prepared a report which has been accepted by what was the task force, but by Wolfeboro Waters Committee. And a hard copy of it is available in the town hall for anybody who wishes to see it. But if you can wait a little while, it'll be on the website and you can read it electronically. There's a lot of detailed information, a lot of numbers and in here, and I'm not going to speak to all of that. What I wanted to do was just give you a few of the highlights and some of the more significant insights that I think you may be interested in. So we'll see how our technology works here. Well, you'll recall that this gliotrichia bloom that we had at the end of August that fed into the beginning of September, which was the result, which resulted in New Hampshire DES issuing a cyanobacteria advisory recommending that people avoid contact with the water. What we found out since the committee was formed, and this was like in December of that year, that while gliotrichia has the potential to produce toxins, which is the concern, which is why DES issued the advisory, and while this particular bloom did release 2 different types of toxins, they were found to be in concentrations that were of insignificant concern. But it wasn't until December, 3 months later, that we found out whether or not we had something of real concern or not. One of the things that we have done since then is identified laboratory capabilities so that we can, if we do have a bloom on any of our lakes, that we can find out within a matter of days whether or not we're dealing with, we may be able to tell whether it's the type of bloom that has the potential for toxins, but we won't know whether there are in fact toxins at levels of concern, but we will be able to find out within a matter of days. Next, we found over the winter and then going into the spring that there really was quite a lot of community interest and support in this activity. And of course that was reflected in the vote of the warrant articles last year. But also we arranged for a session with US EPA and UNH to come to the Brewster Boathouse and offer cyanobacteria bloom identification, and we had over 80 people sign up for that. And so we ran multiple sessions. And so there was a lot of concern, but there was also a lot of interest and now a lot of ability to recognize cyanobacteria blooms. We also came up with a reporting protocol, which you folks officially adopted, which we did use. And we only had one occasion to use it, and it turned out to be a bloom of something that was not of concern. And that seemed to work pretty well. And in fact, New Hampshire DES has come back and said, this really is a model. Can we share it with other towns? They want to adopt something similar. So we had that. We mentioned at the Water Summit that we could use more people to sample more places in our lakes and to replace some of the people who were already doing volunteer sampling in Lake Wentworth and Crescent Lake and Russ Pond. And over 30 people volunteered and were trained by UNH to do water sampling. And as a result, where we were missing, had real gaps in information, was primarily in the Wolfeboro waters of Lake Winnipesaukee. We had started getting measurements in Winter Harbor starting in 2017 with 5 sites there. We added additional sites, so we had, in 2019 we had 6 sites in Winter Harbor, but we had 10 other sites in Winnipesaukee, ranging from Back Bay to Jockey's Cove to Dellings Cove to Wolfeboro Bay and the like. So for the first time we got samples that went to UNH for analysis, and we've gotten results back from that. And so that's part of the extent of community involvement. I also want to mention that a number of the firms and people in town were helping to get volunteers, or they volunteered their shop to hold supplies, and in the end, the Mill Street Meat Market volunteered to be a place where UNH sampling kits could be placed, because we have so many samplers, they need to be shared, and where supplies and bottles and so forth could be picked up, and where the samples, once collected and processed, could be stored in a refrigerator or freezer. And so we have a small refrigerator freezer dedicated to this, and the Mill Street Meat Market was very kind to offer us space. So I just want to stress the extent of community involvement and community interest in this. All right, moving on. To give you just a broad overview on our lakes, I'm going to go into more detail on Winter Harbor. There were no blooms that resulted in an advisory. There was one on Mirror Lake this year, and they've had some in the past, but there were no cyanobacteria blooms identified in Lake Wentworth, Crescent Lake, or Russ Pond. And the water quality data that came, each of those lakes, Russ Pond, Crescent Lake, Lake Wentworth, and Mirror Lake, in the past have had a formal assessment with a formal watershed management plan and goals for water quality in the future. And Lake Wentworth, Crescent Lake, Russ Pond, all showed improvements in their water quality toward those goals. Now, as you are well aware, and that's in response and to a variety of mitigation actions that have been funded and that have been undertaken, some by the town and some by private folks. In the case of Mirror Lake, in the past, efforts have been made to cut off nutrients that were flowing into the lake, and I think that has largely been successful, and there is some improvement in the water quality in Mirror Lake. However, they have a pretty big repository of nutrients on the bottom of the lake that on occasion can stimulate blooms, and there was another one in August this year. Those 10 sampling sites in Lake Winnipesaukee, all of them showed, for the traditional measures that are measured through the UNH program, all showed good water quality, which is great. So we're very happy about that. Now, Winter Harbor, we've done a bunch more with respect to Winter Harbor, in part because it is the location where we had the bloom and concern. It's also where Cary Beach is, and so the public is there. And there clearly are problems that need to be addressed. And so that's not to say that there aren't problems or issues elsewhere in our waters. But our belief is that we need to understand what's going on, be able to measure our risks, measure progress in reducing the risks in Winter Harbor, develop an understanding of what all is going on. It's complex. And then take the lessons that we've learned in Winter Harbor and apply. We think there'll be a lot of lessons that will be applicable elsewhere in our lakes and also elsewhere in the lakes of New Hampshire. And we're getting a lot of cooperation from New Hampshire DES, from US EPA, from UNH, and we hope to engage Bigelow Lab with some special capabilities this upcoming year. So Winter Harbor has had a special focus, and I will tell you a little bit about what we've found over the course of this year. First of all, there are a lot of possible sources of nutrients that can feed biological growth. And the biological growth can be plants, it can be algae, it could be cyanobacteria. And these include air pollution, they include waterfowl, they include nutrients that are already in the lake, they can come from septic systems, and they can also come from runoff. We've been able to determine pretty confidently that the vast majority of the nutrients going in the lake, and the most important nutrient that we're measuring is phosphorus, because there are certain things that biological systems need. They need phosphorus, they need nitrogen, they need oxygen or carbon dioxide, they need water, they need heat, and so forth. And all of those are in excess except for phosphorus, which means that if you add some phosphorus, you get more growth. If you add more nitrogen, you don't. So we're particularly interested in the level of phosphorus and where that's coming from. And that's a general marker for the nutrients that are either in or flowing to the lake. Well, I could go in and provide you a bunch of the information as to why we are confident. I mean, you had models from Underwood Engineering, estimating, septic versus runoff and so forth. And how much it would cost to deal with a pound of phosphorus from one versus the other. I can tell you that from what you measure in the water, it's clear that it's much greater contribution from stormwater runoff than septic systems. If you spend a lot of money putting in a sewer there, you'd be connecting summer homes. And the high levels of phosphorus in the lake are not during the summer. It really is from stormwater. Now, but we don't have major tributaries. We don't have single points where runoff is going into the lake. But Winter Harbor is at the bottom of hills coming from North Main Street, and also Wine Oak Acres is on a hill that goes down to the edge of the lake as well, and Winter Harbor has there's no flow through it. I mean, it is the Wolfeboro end is a bay terminated by Cary Beach. And so we've got a bunch of runoff that clearly is sources of our problem. And one of the keys is going to be to try and figure out, well, where are these sources and where are the most important sources, because we don't have infinite money to go after these. We want to invest in mitigation that'll get by far the best return. And so, but we've got a challenge to try and prioritize the different sources. Now, I happened to pull this up yesterday or the day before off of Google Earth, and when you go in, sometimes it says the satellite picture was from July 7, 2019, and in another case it says it was from May 2018. But in any case, that's pretty. I mean, you can see that the focus at Cary Beach and the focus at Whitegate Road, which is up the shore from Cary Beach going to the right there, is probably a pretty good place to start. And so, but that's not to say that that's all the areas of concern. I mean, for example, this is a washout at Port Valen, in mid-December, and that's a pretty noteworthy washout. And you can see that a bunch of the sediment and so forth has gone over the netting down there and right into the lake. So we've got to try and get on top of and identify the most important sources, other than the ones we're already going to be already addressing. Now, and one of the things we're going to do, for example, is try and fly a drone down the shore this next week while there's still ice on the lake, because there are openings in the lake where people have circulators or bubblers, but there are also openings in the lake where stormwater and melt is flowing into the lake. And so hopefully we will be able to see visually those and the relative sizes of the openings as a way of sort of trying to check things out. Now, all of the data that we had through 2018 was collected during the summer months. July and August, and occasionally, one in September. And the levels of phosphorus in Winter Harbor were good. DES sets a level of 8 and below, 8 micrograms of liters per liter, or below, being good. And so we were finding phosphorus levels in the water of 4 or 5, which was not bad. But we had never collected water samples and gotten any measurements of the phosphorus at any other time of the year. Well, after the bloom, I decided we ought to collect at least monthly samples through the fall and the winter, which is not hard to do when you've got a dock and you've got a bubbler keeping it open. And this is what you get. You can see the low levels there, way over on the left. And then when you get into October, we not only exceeded 8, we got up to 17.5. And then it dipped on down around Christmas time and around New Year's and so forth, below 8 again. But when the ice got out back in April, we were back above 8, and for some time, and got up to nearly 12 right at the beginning of July. And so the picture is not as good as what we had thought, and by looking at it through the year. Now, I mentioned that we had no cyanobacteria advisories on our lakes, except for Mirror Lake. But that's not to say that we didn't have any cyanobacteria blooms. Last June, the end of June, we had a small and a brief bloom of this cyanobacteria, which is different than the one we had in 2018, and one which can potentially produce a different toxin. And this was after the period of time when the phosphorus had been above 8, and so it was consistent with what we were measuring at the phosphorus levels, as you can see. And so I put an arrow. This is just a piece of that graph you saw before, and you see we had a bloom when it was above 8, and if that Google Pro, the picture was from July 7th, that picture was taken at that point in time. And so phosphorus is a pretty good measure of cyanobacteria risks that we get of those that live primarily in the water. Okay, but remember that in 2018 we had a bloom of this critter. This is the Gliotrichia, and each of those little balls is 5,000 cells, and that occurred when the phosphorus levels were very low. 3.7, 4.4, and so it's like, what's going on? And one of the things that's clear is that the phosphorus levels that we measure in the water are not measuring the risk, and in fact, a bunch of the other parameters are not even measuring the presence of the Gliotrichia in high levels. In large part because Gliotrichia evidently has most of its life cycle in the sediment as opposed to in the water. Okay, and so it just so happens that when that bloom occurred, you see on the 28th, 29th, and within the day, we happen to have gotten a collection of a few different types of phosphorus measurements. And we're very lucky to have done that because it takes, we don't get we collect something, send it off the lab, but we don't get the results back for months. So you don't know what the phosphorus levels are going to be. So you don't know to collect something else. But it just so happens that we collected that I happen to have somebody, a friend who grew up in this area, who's at the Bigelow lab, there that day, and I was saying, look what the story is here. And we managed to, the day before, had collected a water sample from a stream, which is stormwater runoff. Our family's lived there, for 60 or more years. And when I was young, there was no stream there, and it only runs intermittently when we have snow runoff or rain. And while the water concentration of the phosphorus was 3.7, which is good, right? The level of the phosphorus in that stream flowing into the water that day, or the day before, was 4,789 micrograms per liter. I mean, 1,000 times or 500 times what's good, and it was flowing directly into the lake. And you wonder, well, where is this all going, right? Well, we managed to collect a sample, in fact, 3 different samples from the sediment to measure the phosphorus in the sediment, and Bigelow determined that the soluble portion of phosphorus in the sediment, which was the next day, was 96 micrograms per liter, more than 10 times the desired level within the water. So you can see that we've got quite a complex thing going on here, and and there's not a very good understanding as to why it's 96 and is soluble. I mean, in other words, it's already dissolved, but in the sediment, and is 30 times higher than what's in the water above it, and that the stream is coming in 1,000 times above it. And so we're going to try and pin that down this year by looking doing more sediment monitoring, and getting a better understanding of the life cycle of these things, and try and pin it down. One of the other things that we found, we've been either given or I've been given either or loaned an amazing array of additional equipment besides the kits that the volunteer samplers have done, which have enabled us to do a variety of other things, to collect other measurements and microscope, and to be able to look under the microscope and try and that Anabina that bloomed was a picture. I mean, that was from Winter Harbor, and it was a picture from our microscope. One of the things we found, we have an instrument which is a fluorometer that will measure two proteins, one that's associated with green algae and one that's associated with cyanobacteria, and it will give you the relative concentrations of those and let you know whether they're very high or not. What happened on that day of that bloom, it was right after the cyanobacteria training, actually, and there was already pollen by the shore, and it was actually by my beach, and I saw this green strip, and I was running off to a meeting, and I wasn't going to be able to do it, but I went and grabbed a bottle full of this stuff, just a little bottle of it, and saying, well, that'd be interesting to look at on the fluorometer, but before you put it in the fluorometer, they want you to freeze it and then thaw it so it'll break the cells open. But that bloom was not there, and it was only about this wide, and it was only about 40 feet long, and it was gone an hour later and never came back. And so I didn't think much about it. And so it stayed with the other frozen samples for maybe 6 weeks, and then I ran those all through. When I ran that, lots of times you see below detectable, and if I concentrate the samples, I could get up to maybe 30. When I put the thing in, that one unconcentrated was 14,000. So, I mean, it was no question it was a cyanobacteria bloom. And DES looked at the residual and said, that's Anabina. But whenever I even got up to 30 or 40, I would look under the microscope to see what we had. Well, sometimes you see Anabina, sometimes you see a little Gliotrichia, sometimes you see a little bit of this or that, but often you didn't see much at all. In fact, what you saw was this. Don't worry about the, like the hair and stuff that are there. But see all those little tiny dots? It's almost certain that those are what they call pico cyanobacteria, which are much tinier than the cells that are forming these blooms. But there are several different types of pico cyanobacteria, and many of them, if not most of them, also have the potential to produce toxins of concern. And so what we have is we've got, at different times during the season and during the year, we have a growth of some and proliferation of some and less of others. So, but again, we have no ability to track phosphorus at real time. But we hope that we will, over the course of this year, get a pretty good profile of the range of cyanobacteria that we're dealing with. And DES believes that what we're seeing in Winter Harbor is representative, at least, of what's in Lake Winnipesaukee. and that we will be able to develop a method by, if not this summer, next summer, being able to track real time, not the phosphorus, but the cyanobacteria of the cells, which would be terrific, and it would help us a whole lot. I'm going to end by saying we've still got some other things we need to figure out as well. We have this stuff that we've had in recent summers. It starts floating in and floating up on the beach. And I know that there's something like this, if not the identical thing, in places in like Wentworth, because I have a friend who said that they were grabbing the algae and putting it in their garden as a fertilizer. But DES suspects that it's this Stigonomatalis or whatever, which is in fact a cyanobacteria. So we want to figure out what that is, and we will collect samples of it, and we will figure out what it is, okay? And then we have this gooey stuff that's down on the bottom. Whether that's associated with the sediment stages of gliotrichia, or whether that's something else, or whether it's cyanobacteria, or whether it's a common algae, we need to figure that out. We want to know what the risks are. We want to know how to measure the risks, and then we want to apply our knowledge not only to Winter Harbor, but to the rest of our waters, and to share it with others who are dealing with the management of lakes in New England. So I want to thank you for your support. I think we've made a lot of progress actually in a year, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
We certainly appreciate all that you've done. Certainly you've kept us well informed on it.
Yeah.
So I assume you will keep doing that.
We will keep monitoring, and we'll prepare another report next year as well.
With a new name.
No, this one already had the new name. We anticipated your vote.
That's what I mean, with the new name.
Warren did the assumptive close.
Okay, anybody have any questions for Warren?
No, I just want to thank again Warren for all the work that he's done, and I am on that committee with him, and he's done a great job for us.
Thank you.
Warren's on my committee as well, and thank you very much for all the work you've done. We're lucky to have Warren Muir.
Thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda is road postings.
Hello, Matt Sullivan or Dave Ford. I'm not sure which one I am right now, but I think I'm Dave Ford, to present the annual request to the board to do the road postings pursuant to RSA 41-2 and obviously under the town's current road ordinance. This road restriction is proposed for vehicles greater than 10 tons in size. As many of you may be aware, the towns of Alton and Ospey have already posted their roads, so although we are the last, this does line up with the historical posting date. Last year was a bit later in the month, but we are right on time with where we've been in the past. If the posting is approved this evening, it would go into effect on Monday, March 9th of 2020. And additionally, this posting would go up on the town website. We've begun communicating this to contractors, and it will also be posted in the paper as well. And we actually have been a bit presumptive with that, and the posting is scheduled to go in tomorrow, so we're hopeful that the board do approve this evening. Just wanted to be honest about that. One thing I do want to reiterate is, on behalf of the Public Works Department, is that we are flexible in this policy, at least the Public Works Department is. We work both with business owners and with property owners to make exceptions as necessary. And if a homeowner needs an exception for a contractor or some other larger vehicle to use to gain access to their home, please just reach out to the Public Works Department and file a request for an exception. We actually grant a temporary exception permit for that. And again, flexibility I think really is key. And that really is based upon fluctuations in road condition, temperature, depending upon what day an exception probably will be possible. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer those. The road list is largely unchanged from the past, obviously. In fact, it's really the same road list, but I'm happy to answer any questions or at least bring answers to those questions back to the board if you have any that I can't address tonight.
So any requests for exemptions would go through David Ford's office?
That's
correct.
correct.
You at this point?
It would go through the Public Works office. That's correct.
Thank you.
And the contact info will be present in the notice posting itself.
My one comment was, for a while, we didn't post the roads, and we paid the price of the condition of, and I can speak specifically about Pleasant Valley Road, took a beating. So I'm glad we are going to post the roads.
And are you doing the next item?
I am hoping for a motion on the road posting as well.
Dave, I'll move that we start the road postings on March 9th, 2020 on the roads presented to us tonight.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, next on our agenda is a meeting with New Hampshire DOT in reference to reduce speed limits.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, here on behalf of Dave Ford to address the board about a recent meeting with New Hampshire DOT to address really 4 issues, including the reduced speed limits, but in addition, some interim measures being proposed as part of the 2020 pavement overlay project. That's as part of the planning stages for our 2024 reconstruction. Also to address some crosswalk modifications that are being recommended by NHDOT. And lastly, to address the installation of RRFBs, or rectangular rapid flashing beacons, within the community. To start, though, I wanted to begin with the Route 28 speed limit discussion. Dave Ford did meet with New Hampshire DOT February 4th of 2020, earlier this month, or last month rather, to discuss the speed limits primarily between Kingswood Road and Oakwood Road. I've included a sketch in the board packet, or you've received a sketch, and I do have a couple copies available for the public. If you'd like one, I'll leave those right up here. I've included a sketch in your packet. If you don't have one, I actually have copies for you as well.
Don't have one.
Don't have one.
I have one.
Yeah, we got this by email.
Just want to walk you through this sketch very quickly. To orient you, obviously, we've shown sort of in the northern extent of the map the high school complex, and then the southern area of the map where you see that blue line intersect with that grayish line. That is the Alton town boundary. Currently, there are a mix of speed limits in this area, and I've tried to summarize this, although it may be a bit confusing, so let me just walk through it. Both the blue and the orange are the existing speed limits. The blue indicates a 30-mile-per-hour zone, with the orange representing a 40-mile-per-hour zone. And oddly enough, that 40-mile-per-hour zone currently goes through one of the more heavily traveled pedestrian areas in this corridor. There are really 2 modifications being proposed by NHDOT, and it's sort of a compromised approach. What's being recommended is that from approximately Kingswood Road to Waltz Lane, where the speed limit is 40 miles an hour, DOT is recommending a reduction in speed from 40 down to 35 miles per hour. Then, from Waltz Lane to the intersection approximately with Oakwood Road, DOT is recommending an increase in speed from the existing 30-mile-per-hour zone up to 35. We do believe this is a compromise, but as I'd like to note this evening, really the more sensitive pedestrian and safety, I think, affected area is the portion that is being proposed to be reduced in speed by 5 miles an hour. So we do support this request. Additionally, the area between Waltz Lane and Oakwood Road is substantially controlled by road geometry. As you travel through that area, because of the width of the road and the nature of the curve at Weston's Auto Body, drivers do tend to drive a bit slower through here, and the conflicts are really vehicle to vehicle rather than pedestrian to vehicle, because there aren't really pedestrian access ways built in here. So again, what's being proposed is a modification to change the speed limit through this entire pink zone as shown on this map to a 35-mile-per-hour speed limit. I did have an opportunity to discuss this modification with the Chief of Police, who I think is available to answer any questions, but I think I can speak for him in saying that he did support the proposed modifications by NHDOT. What we're hoping for this evening is a request to draft a letter on behalf of the Selectmen to give to DOT approving or functionally approving this request if you're amenable to that. That's item number 1 that I want to address with the board.
I have a question. It's their recommendation that we have these rectangular rapid flashing beacons. Now, I guess my question is, who installs them, who pays for them, and who does the upkeep?
And Dave, I was actually going to address that under a little bit later in my.
Okay.
I have a couple things I wanted. I'm happy to answer that question. I just wanted to kind of. I wanted to make sure I was clear on the speed limits
Go
first.
ahead.
Yeah.
Do you want a motion on the speed limit and get that
I'd like to
off
if
the
possible.
table?
Yep.
Can I ask a question before we
Sure,
do that?
absolutely.
So I'd like us to think about something here. We have data that tells us from the Alton line up to wherever the proposed change is going to end, up near Edgewood Road or up in that area. We have data in terms of incidences, traffic incidences. We have that in hand. And I'm sure our beloved police department tracks that pretty actively. I'd like to propose that, and it's not a condition of my approval or not, but I'd like to propose that we come back a year from now with, or whenever we implement these revised speeds, we come back a year after those revised speeds are implemented and see if we have better outcomes. I mean, just simply changing the number from 40 to 35 doesn't help unless outcomes improve. And so that would be my ask. That is, take the base case that we currently have, go ahead and change the speed numbers. Some are going to go up, some are going to go down. Come back a year after that's all done and tell us whether things got better. If they didn't, that tells you something. If they did, then that's good.
Are you talking better in terms of accidents?
Yeah,
or are you talking in terms of better how many tickets they had to issue for speeding? I mean, I need to know what we're trying to get better.
Well, speeding tickets would be possibly an indicator. Incidents in terms of, metal to metal would probably be an indicator. Pedestrian near misses might be an indicator. Whatever the police department currently measures right now, take those data, roll them a year forward after this is done, and see whether we come up with a better mousetrap. Otherwise, moving the number from 40 to 35 really doesn't tell me anything. It just says we made the number go from 40 to 35 and 35 to 30, or 30 to 35. Right? That's all. I'm just asking for an outcome discussion.
I thought part of the reason we were doing it was trying to get a consistent speed, because we go from, one speed to another, kind of constantly is changing down the that was part of our reason why we did
good, but outcomes would be good too.
I am Chief Rondo, Wolfeboro PD. Relative to Selectman O'Brien's suggestions, and I just want to bring the Board of Selectmen up to the capability that we have because of the radar warning trailers and signs that we have. So we can obviously track in essentially near real time over any period of time you want to do this, the actual speeds in whatever area that you want to collect data. So what I mean is, for example, next week or next month or whatever, if you wanted to track the speeds between, say, Oakwood Road and Kingswood Road, for example, we could put the radar warning trailer and signs at various locations, and we can track, we can do vehicle counts, we can do speeds in near real time. And we can get the average speed, and we have incredible data collection packages, so that is available to the board in your decision-making capability. Of course, we have to collect that data. We don't physically have it right now, but what I'm saying is we could get it, and we could get it at various points of time. And as we deploy the radar warning trailers, just so you know, around town, and you see the signs around town, and they move, right? We move them because we're trying to address speeding issues and other issues. It's constantly collecting data and sending the data back to us. So the more we do this, obviously, the more places we put these signs, the more data we collect. And it is really a very powerful collection platform. That's number one. Number two, obviously, we do have the data right now available for however many years you want to go back relative to, speeding tickets and warnings and crashes that occur in this stretch of road. We typically, just so you know, we're still kind of in the winter months. We don't take the radar trailer route because that's a very expensive piece of equipment. We don't want to put it by the road when it's bad weather because we don't want to hazard that $25,000 piece of equipment. in a car crash, right? The truth is stranger than fiction. And we did have one sign vandalized early last year, and we had to get that replaced and so forth and so on. So during the wintertime, we typically don't put these things up, but we can, and we're here to support the Board of Selectmen and whatever data collection you need, and the town manager and the planner and the public works director. So I just wanted to make that clear that we have that capability to collect that data. And whatever you need for data, Matt, or Dave Ford needs, we'll be happy to provide it and do a deep dive and collect all that data. I don't know what it would be off the top of my head. And whenever you need that by, we're just a phone call away. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I also, it's been my experience over the years that if we have a 40-mile-an-hour speed limit, the state will not put any crosswalks in. If we have 35 miles an hour or less, they will approve crosswalks. So this can become an issue, a tentative issue, particularly with the golf course, and possibly other areas where somebody, because of our sidewalk system, the way we have it on both sides of South Main Street, that there may be some people who want more crosswalks. So, that being said, we need to also think about that, because if it's at 35, people can ask for crosswalks to be installed. And I know it's a state highway, but I know that in years past, when I've asked for crosswalks in certain areas, particularly the golf course, they said they would not approve any crosswalks unless the speed limit was 35 miles an hour or less. So you're going to get some people that are going to look at that, just for your information.
And quite honestly, I think that this 35-mile-an-hour reduction is partially due to the continued requests to have a crosswalk in Kingswood.
I'm sure it is.
Because they're resistant to that, I think they'd prefer to simply reduce the speed rather than install the crosswalk, which I think that both should be considered, but this, I think, is one step in that direction.
When I was on the board at Kingswood, we had an awful fight with the state to try to get a crosswalk. And they said until the police department puts in a request to drop the speed limit, no.
I have only, when we start looking at that crosswalk at the golf course, my problem, and if you're coming up out of town and going south, you have lights there's signs that tell you that there is a crosswalk up a way coming, a light that's telling you that the school's coming, and also a sign saying there are going to be people coming across. So you're reading all these signs, and they're very confusing. I showed it to Dave Ford. I said, "What's that about?" And he said, "Well, that's about the crosswalk way up above." So I am concerned, and we need to have the right signage for what is coming immediately, and that the sign for the crosswalk and some of the other stuff, they all get jammed in about a 20-foot spot, and you're sitting there, and somebody new coming in town wouldn't know what the heck we're talking about.
Yeah, and those
For clarity, and just for clarity, the crosswalk that is in question is where now?
Way up at the high school.
The high school.
The other side of the high school, in the just
By the water tower on McManus.
just a little bit before that, yes. The one before that, that's kind of in the middle
I'm
of the.
talking about the cart path drive across.
No, there is signage that says there are pedestrians coming across there also. It isn't a crosswalk. I mean, the number of signs saying different things within, 10, 20 feet is amazing, and you don't know which one they're talking about. So if we bring this down, one of the criteria is that we have the right kind of signage, that we're not telling drivers there are going to be all sorts of crossings way before and interfering with an immediate crossing.
Well, if you look at the item 4 on the letter, you literally could have series of crosswalks within a couple hundred yards of each other. I mean, it could be.
There's 10 of them.
It could be nuts.
Yeah. Why don't I actually go through the entire letter, and then we can kind of open it up fully? Yeah, just because I think...
the first is the speed limit. Are you cool with that?
Did we get a motion on the speed limit?
I didn't, because Dave made the comment, and then we started talking about what are all the other...
Sure.
He was saying the comment, well, you have a sidewalk, then we have all the other ramifications.
Yep.
So I'm going to hold up on making that
Okay.
until we talk about all the rest.
Go ahead, make it number one.
Sure. So the second item in Dave's letter is the discussion that was held with DOT about what we're calling 2020 pavement overlay interim measures. So for folks who aren't aware, we are scheduled to have an overlay project or a repaving project only in year 2020 on the portion from Pickering Corner to the Alton Town line. As part of that overlay project, we've been in discussion with DOT about implementing some interim traffic calming measures. I've identified a few here. The first is ensuring that the travel lane width is between 11 and 10.5 feet. We've actually had some discussion about even narrower widths in some sensitive areas, and that would run the entire length of the road, again, from Pickering Corner to the Alton Town line. We want to reduce the travel lane, and the effect, obviously, would be that ideally, as a traffic calming measure, cars will move at a slower speed. That's one measure. Additionally, we'd like to discuss with the police department the installation of some potential active speed signs that actually indicate when drivers are traveling above the speed limit. I know personally when I see those, they do have sometimes a bit of a lurching effect, but often a general traffic calming effect, and I think that the installation of those signs, if appropriately placed and not overplaced within the corridor, would have a positive effect, and DOT seems amenable to actually doing that. So that would be the second proposed measure. We are in discussion about...
I have a question on number two.
Yep.
I'm assuming, and I'm only assuming, that when they overlay this, they're going to overlay it the same width as it is now?
That's correct.
And then put the lines in closer?
That's correct. Okay. That's a good clarification.
All right.
What is it? I'm fine except for when I think of that logging truck coming down.
Yeah.
Is there adequate room for a logging truck coming down that road?
Absolutely. And one of the odd things, obviously, is that as you reduce the travel lane width, vehicles of that size will still take advantage of some width outside of the travel lane if necessary. And on the other side of that, literally, is that vehicles on the other side do have some latitude to still travel on the paved travelway, but potentially a little bit outside of the painted travel line. So yes, the width is still there. Will all cars be able to remain within the painted lines at all times? Potentially not, as we reduce the width. But I think the benefits outweigh the drawbacks in that sense, and some conflicts may be dealt with naturally.
So I get this to the chief. If you're traveling down and you're going I guess they call it the fog line, you have somebody coming down and they're moving over there. Will you ticket them for that?
No,
Okay.
no, not, no, we wouldn't normally ticket somebody for driving you're talking about driving to the right of the fog line? Yeah, no, not necessarily. The only time we would get a little concerned about something like that is if they were driving in the breakdown lane, if you will, over that fog line, or we'd probably want it, and that was going on for a considerable distance, we'd probably put the lights on and is everything okay? I mean, you have your flashes on as the vehicle, you're trying to get the vehicle to Western Auto, whatever the case may be, and then we'd help them get there if that was the case. But if it's for a temporary hazard, or they having difficulty negotiating a curve because the vehicle is too big or too wide, or they're trying to avoid a bicycle or whatever the case may be, no, we don't do that.
Thank you.
Additionally, it does obviously provide protection for bicyclists and other mode users on the road. It provides more of a shoulder for them to use, and I think it still does allow the flexibility for traffic to move effectively within the paved travel way. But it would probably feel like a change in some areas, depending upon the width. But I think it would be one that would calm traffic effectively throughout the corridor. So it's something that DOT is open to doing.
But we're not addressing that tonight, not part of the lesson. I still would like to talk about that, narrowing that. To me, I have more issue with that than the other.
Yeah, there definitely is time to discuss many of the items I wanted to talk about tonight. This is really intended to just be a brief update, but there is time to still discuss that. And to that point, DOT is open to other measures. One of the things that we've been talking about with them is the potential for additional markings leading up to crosswalks, even restricting the travel lane at least visually, and maybe some potential markings on the sides of crosswalks that indicate that crosswalk is coming. DOT is, as we've discussed many times, sometimes a bit resistant to non-Green Book approaches to a lot of these traffic calming problems, but they do seem open to having some context-sensitive implementation. Again, I think they recognize that this could be temporary in nature because we do it in 2020 with the 2024 project coming at a later time. But it would give us an opportunity to pilot some of these techniques that they may not be overly comfortable with straight out of the box as it is today. Additionally, we have been talking to DOT about crosswalk modifications. Some of this discussion we've already had with the Board of Selectmen, and obviously as part of the public hearing process, their public forum process. This new item, though, is that DOT is, this is one of the stronger items that they are on, and that is the relocation of the crosswalk that's currently at McManus Road right now. DOT is committed to moving that crosswalk to the south side of Route 28. And the reason for that, and it took me a second to really understand what the concern was, but if you're sitting in McManus Road and you're making a turning movement either to the right or to the left out of McManus Road, there's obviously a lot of coming and going traffic. The crosswalk as it's placed right now is a closer potential conflict point because you're taking a right-hand turn than if the crosswalk is moved to the southern side where the driver exiting McManus Road has time to react if there is a pedestrian in the crosswalk. That has been their justification for this change, and quite frankly, I'm not sure how many options we have. The conversation is still open, but they are committed to moving this crosswalk to that south side of the McManus Road entrance to Route 28. I'm curious what the board's feedback is on that. It took me a second to really understand the justification for the change, but that is what they are proposing to us.
Just for clarification, Matt, I think that the crosswalk's not at McManus Road entrance and exit, it's at the parking lot exit.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
By the water
Yep,
tower.
yep, thank you.
Just to,
Oh, okay, you're talking, I was trying to picture that.
Yeah.
That, and that is only, that's only an out, it's not an out and in.
Correct.
Okay, and now I know where you
Yeah,
are.
I'm sorry about that. Yep, a little confusion there.
that makes sense what Matt's saying too, with the traffic coming out, if they're coming out turning left, they're a lane further away from crossing the crosswalk as opposed to going right across it immediately if someone happens to be stepping off the sidewalk, so.
Yeah, if you're sitting there and you're taking a right-hand turn and you're looking to your left for traffic, you start to go and then suddenly someone runs into the crosswalk, they are right there. You've got no time at all to stop. And after I sat down and really kind of drew this out, it made a lot of sense to me. And I think that's why they're so staunch about this particular change, because it does make some common sense, I think.
Do we have a sidewalk that leads to that crosswalk? Does it kind of come down?
Yes, we do have a sidewalk that leads to that, yes. Yep, so we have to make some modifications to that. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's on both sides.
Yep, it's on both sides.
Yep,
Yep.
yeah,
So there'd be some modification necessary to that.
if they're willing to do that.
That is part of the discussion we're still having right now. The more familiar issue is the 3 Wolfeboro Falls crosswalks that the board has discussed in some detail. DOT has become a bit more flexible on this, but they are still recommending the removal of 1 crosswalk. And the crosswalk that they're recommending the removal of is that which is between basically Blacksmith Printing and the public parking lot, so the one that's furthest along as we drive out on Center Street right here. Therefore, the crossing at the Wright Museum and the crossing at the Bridge Falls Path would remain, but they're still uncomfortable with the proximity of that crosswalk to the split at 109A and the potential traffic conflict area that exists there. I'm not clear exactly, because I wasn't at this meeting, I'm not clear how staunch they are in their recommendation there, but I'm curious if the board recognizes that as a compromise or if you'd like some continued push from staff to maintain the existing crosswalk between Blacksmith and parking lot. Again, I'm not sure exactly how flexible DOT is at this point, but they are recommending
Blacksmith, it's up further. It's
just past Blacksmith.
It's really out of that parking lot.
By Linda's Flowers, yeah.
Yeah.
It's more Linda's Flowers, yes, yeah.
Okay, it's
Yeah,
up
I guess
this
I'm going to
way.
get my geography a bit more on, but yeah, that is a bit more in that direction, yep. But obviously, it's not the crossing at the actual 109 intersection between that sidewalk and you know which one I'm talking about. It's not that one, it's the one that's actually in the Center Street corridor. Sure. So they are recommending removal of that. They have bent slightly in the sense that they were proposing only 1 crosswalk to remain, but not fully. They do still feel that 1 crosswalk should be removed. And that would be done, just for clarification, as part of the other overlay project in 2020, which will go from that corridor out to the Ossipee town line. Lastly, to Dave's question earlier, as part of these projects, we are talking to NHDOT about potential for 9 proposed RRFBs along the corridor. We are definitely concerned about the proliferation of these devices, particularly in the context of the character of Wolfeboro. DOT does seem somewhat sensitive to our concerns, and they are willing to discuss whether or not there should be a different approach to the community. But to answer Dave's question, these would be installed, as far as I understand it, at DOT cost, but would ultimately be asked, the DOT would ask the town to take on the long-term operations, maintenance, and potentially replacement of these devices. They aren't asking for that agreement this evening, but it's something that we wanted to make the board aware of, particularly because of the large number of crossing devices that are actually proposed, which is 9. And the 9 are at the high school, golf course, library, Green Street and Crescent Lake Ave, Brewster Academy, Pickering Corner, Center Street Plaza, which has already been completed. That's one that exists right now. Center Street at the Wright Museum, and obviously Center Street at the Bridge Falls Path. Those 2 crosswalks that are proposed to remain after the overlay.
I did some looking downtown, and one of the things I think that causes us our problems at the crosswalks, it's because we run our electric lines on one side of the road or on the other. So when we have a crosswalk, we only have the light on one side. And one of the things I did is I went down to the new crosswalk in Wolfeboro Center, which has the lights on either side of the sidewalk. And I'm wondering whether us putting some nice lights in that gives proper illumination, that we could eliminate some of these need for the flashers and have the lights that we need on the crosswalks. I think we have some sides that are very dark. And so that would be my suggestion.
I had a question about the Pickering corner. So is Pickering, is the Brewster that is that you have here as item 5, is that part of the Pickering corner conversation, or is that up near the Children's Center?
That the Brewster Academy crossing is the Children's Center crossing. That's my understanding. And that one I do want to talk about in just a second because Brewster's taking some lead on that. But does that answer your question, Paul?
Don't we have 2 crosswalks at Pickering Corner?
We do have 2 crossings.
So would we have 1 or 2 of these blinky things?
I believe the proposal is only to have 1 at Pickering Corner, but I'm not sure on which crosswalk. To your question, I can get you some more information on that.
Yeah, I'd make a comment. Looking at this list that they have here of all the different crosswalks and stuff. Personally, I don't want to see these beacons all over town and stuff. I just don't think they're going to look good. But I could justify 2 of them, one being at the high school, the other one being at the Brewster Academy, where the 2 schools are, where the kids are out crossing most, during their free hours when they're going in and out of school and stuff like that. I could probably go along with those 2, but all the other ones there, I would have a problem supporting those going in. I'd rather see, like you talked about, maybe improve some lighting at some of these crosswalks and make them a little bit nicer that way. But
And you can put these things in blinkers on, and I'll tell you who won't cross are the kids. I was at a meeting in Plymouth before this, and I was going down by their athletic field house, and they were walking all over the place. The blinker was there, but they were not in that crosswalk. So if we think we're going to put this up there and they're going to walk,
this is way too many.
They're not going to. I saw it today.
Yeah. So the discussion is very much still open. DOT is well aware, and as you all know, Dave Ford, as a representative, has been quite passionate in discussing the implementation of these RRFBs in town. So there is an opportunity for compromise, I think. DOT has even indicated already that they're willing to be a little more flexible in their position, which is encouraging. Yeah. But I think this is important to identify with them that can we improve lighting and reduce the amount of actual RRFBs? I think they might be open to that approach. And I think it may improve the aesthetic of the crossings as well.
9 locations for flashing within the
within a very short amount of time. Yeah.
Yes. We could probably sell our town as the outer marker to Manchester Airport if we did.
Yeah, absolutely.
The one on Center Street, which was part of the project.
Yep.
I don't have an issue with that one. We got 2 shopping centers, so forth. I don't have a problem with that one. The others I have a lot of problems with.
The sight lines of some of these places are long enough, like, when you're at the Bridge Falls Path, you got a lot of sight line coming in both directions that, I don't know, I kind of like the idea of where there are children and where there are 2, in the case of Center Street, where you have 2 shopping complexes or active complexes where people are migrating back and forth. that's okay, but the rest of this, I think, gets a little over the pale.
Mr. Chairman, I would just say, putting on my previous hat as fire chief, and incidents which had occurred, I would strongly recommend the golf course one as well.
Really?
The golf course isn't even a crossing yet.
No,
You
but
know,
they have it listed as a potential
Let 'em put in a
one here, and
crosswalk.
we've had some pretty
What?
Let them put in a crosswalk.
Yeah.
I don't
I'm not sure,
That's
I'm not
back
sure
to
that's
my
likely
thing with
to
all the
happen.
different
He says golf
signs.
course. What are you talking about?
The crosswalk, he was saying he wants a blinker at the golf
So
course.
you're talking about the golf cart crosswalk.
This identifies the golf course.
And I think the chief would tell you there are incidents there of rear-enders out there,
Correct.
and the state's not interested in the cut-and-cover tunnel.
Okay. Anything else, Matt?
I just wanted to note that Brewster Academy is working with, is contracted with Stantec Engineering, who you may recognize from some of the other transportation projects in town. They are actually working at their own cost to accelerate the process and install one of these RRFBs at the Children's Center crosswalk. So they may be interested in doing that sooner rather than later. Obviously, there'll be further communication with the town about what the progress is there. There's utility coordination and lighting improvement necessary, but they are at least interested in accelerating this process because they've recognized a real safety issue there. We've had some preliminary meetings with their staff, and they've sort of cemented that. So we'll have further conversation and report on to the board.
Okay, thank you.
And the only thing I wanted to circle back to is a potential motion on the Route 28 speed limits if the board is so inclined. So I'm not sure
I
the
thought
actual...
we just did that.
We didn't do a motion on that.
I didn't do it because you brought up.
Okay. Make a motion then.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we send the February 19th letter to William Lambert regarding the speed limit on Route 28, moving it to 35 miles per hour.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Is this going to be for a one-year thing, or are we going to just
A one-year trial?
Yeah.
I'm not sure DOT would be amenable to that.
Okay, that's
I
fine.
hate to say
Well-
that. But
Let's do it.
And then we'll get the statistics on it, and then if we have to prove a case that it made no difference at all.
I wasn't suggesting, at least in my conversation, that we do a one-year trial. What I was suggesting, though, if we're going to do this, we might as well measure whether we had an outcome improvement. And so if not, then it's window dressing. So I'd like to, I'm not encumbering the motion with a one-year trial.
Okay, but there's a lot of us who go 40 miles an hour there all the time.
It won't be shortly.
Turn yourself in.
the police only ticketed 15 over anyway. So
The only thing we're voting is on the speed. We're not voting on any of
That's
the
correct.
the
That's correct.
flashing and the
Just-
telling us the
yes,
speed limit or
absolutely.
anything else. We're just saying
limit only.
the consistency of 35 miles an hour coming through that corridor makes sense.
Yeah.
That's what my,
According to this diagram.
according to that diagram. There you go.
There you go.
All right, you happy with that, Paul?
Yep.
Okay, all's in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
Okay, next is the January finance expenditures. Mr. Troy.
Good evening. Pleasure to be here. So I got to do a slight twist on the normal ratio read. Using our flat 1/12 metric, we would be, our target budget funding rate would be 8.33%. For the general fund at the end of January, it was 14.796%. Most of that has to do with the rapid rise of encumbering funds, or when budgets roll over, capturing funds from that were able to be captured from the prior year. So to put that in perspective, in 2019, in January, your expense run rate was 26.687. So we've actually slowed down. This January is slower than it was beginning of 2019. For the water fund, they came in at 4.072%, as opposed to in 2019 they were at 17.909%. Your electric fund came in at 13.955%, as opposed to January of 2019, they were 8.208. That is mostly attributable to expenses that are picked up from the project that they are doing that they had bonded, so their stage 5 project. The sewer fund came in at 44.891%. In 2019, it was 43.102%, as primarily to the Wooden Current contract. The Pop Whalen Fund came in at 10.419%, and in 2019, they were at 16.442%. So they've been able to reduce expenses for the first month. So our overall expend rate is 15.971% as opposed to 21.035%. So that's the expenses side, but what does the revenue look like? And so when you compare year to year or look at January's, and the general fund for 2020, we had $508,981. That's in 2019, we had $280,836. It's really attributable to $227,000 that we picked up in motor vehicle registrations. The water fund came in at $109,265 versus $101,539 in 2019. The electric fund was $1,045,335 as compared to $1,089,057. And the sewer fund came in at $74,518 versus $77,449. And Pop Whalen came in at $5,911 as opposed to in 2019 they came in at $10,409. I started to look at the numbers for February as we're finishing closing the books, and it looks like Pop Whalen will have a little stronger February than it has in past. So to put that in perspective, what does all that mean? You know, what does that look like? And if you start looking at it from an income statement basis on a top level, if you took those 5 funds that we look at, last year at this point they were running a $1,030,969 loss because, you know, obviously the town, our primary income is the property tax receipt that we'll see in July. As of right now, we're at $107,361. So we've slowed down the expense rate compared to last year. We have more income than last year. And so after the first month of the year, we're in better shape than we were last year. Any questions?
Well,
the first month of the year, really, it's hard to tell what really is happening.
Yep.
1 month doesn't go on field of tools.
So there's a lot of trending that needs to happen and just coming out now. Thank you.
Thanks, Troy.
Thank you, Troy.
Any questions? No?
Thank you.
Any other business?
I do have other business. I want to just remind everybody that elections take place March 10th in the Great Hall from 8 a.m. To 7 p.m.
Can I pile on that one?
Sure.
Mr. Chairman?
No.
Thank you.
Go to anyway, so.
I'm going to anyway. There's been, out in social media, there's been a little bit of confusion about where's the voter's guide for the upcoming voting next week. And just for clarity, it's on the town website. It's at Town Hall. It's at post offices. And I think that one of our citizens also posted out a link on the 4 major social media sites because people were saying, "Where is it? I don't see it." And is it in this week in the Granite State News? Okay, I haven't seen it yet. Okay, it's out there, folks. It's been out there for a while. You can go find it. You can find it. It's there. Thank you, Dave.
Okay. Anything else? Committee reports, Paul?
Short-term rental committee had its inaugural meeting. That was a kickoff meeting we had a week ago or so. Linda and I attended the energy committee meeting last week. It was a good conversation, and Linda and I co-chair the now the Wolfeboro Waters Committee, the new and improved name. So we had that. Those are my three things. Thanks.
Brad?
The only meeting I've had since the last time was our planning board meeting last night. Fairly smooth meeting. We had 3 public hearings we went through, minor subdivision, and what was the other one? Was a use permit for, actually it was a subdivision thing for a condo. Had a set of steps to a deck. Went over our work schedule for 2020, and that was it for me.
I had a zoning board of adjustment meeting. We got an ag committee meeting tomorrow night. I think there was at least 3 of us at the Abenaki pancake breakfast.
It was good.
It was very, very good. Yep, it was a nice day and it was well attended. David?
None until next Monday.
Okay, Linda?
Yeah, I attended the Energy Committee meeting with Paul, and I have brought with me tonight, there is a 50th anniversary of Earth Day, Earth Care film series. It's at the Village Player, and there is one this Saturday, the 7th. It's Happenings, A Clean Energy Revolution. There are a bunch of these flyers around. The next one is on April 4th from Paris to Pittsburgh. I went to the one on flooding, which was great. So anybody who's interested in that, they should go. I had a meeting with the town manager and town treasurer with some talk about some town records. Today, I had the special events committee meeting, and we were informed by the chamber that they would no longer be able to fund the fireworks, so the special events committee is going to have to put on a campaign to raise the $5,000 if we're going to have fireworks on last night Wolfeboro in town. I was at the Abenaki pancake breakfast. I love that spot. It's a wonderful lodge. The slopes going up were well groomed. They were ready for races, and it was an exciting place to be. And I also went to the Wolfeboro Waters meeting. And that's all I have.
Town manager's report.
To follow up on Paul's point, the voter's guide will be in tomorrow's Granite State News. That document is also on the town website. Also on the town website is the town report, and town reports are also available for pickup at Town Hall, the hard copies. I had a couple of meetings with Energy Committee members about some in-house initiatives that we are going to try to work on. As Linda mentioned, I had a meeting with the treasurer. That was actually a very informative meeting. It was a good discussion. One of the fun items to report, last weekend, many of our employees participated in an ice fishing tournament. Great reviews, heard they all had a wonderful time, and I'm glad that we can have some employees that put that type of effort into having some fun. Just to let the board know and some members of our community, some of our emergency response staff in the next couple of weeks will be attending some meetings at the county level regarding this COVID-19 outbreak. Also, our health officer has provided some information which we have up on the town website as well. And lastly, in your signature package tonight, there will be a letter for Mr. Harding regarding the Libby Museum, as we discussed last week, and a letter for the Cross Country Ski Association. And that's all I have.
Questions from the press? Any public input? Seeing none?
I'll make a motion to go into non-public.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Yes?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Okay, we'll go into non-public. You can go home now, Dean.